Yeah, we're just about to do the CleanRGB guide as well, so this will be like the official guide. I've got this one backed up as well, and I learned my lesson from yesterday. This is like pre-recording as well in case the stream bombs out. Probably should check this console works as well. I checked it was not a one chip, but I didn't check if it even works. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so at least it works. Yep, cool. Let me just check all the streams, because Streamlabs has been funky for days now. So YouTube's obviously up. We've got some comments there. Send this out. Ah, yeah, so Twitch must be working, so we've got people on there now as well, just as I type the message. Yep, so this is it's going to be another install guide. So these are kind of like the official install guides, if you will, of some of the products. I'm going to start working through them. This one's going to be obviously the SNES CleanRGB. So obviously we've got a Super Famicom here, but same thing. Super Famicom's Japanese, SNES is English, basically. So this is pretty similar to the one we did the other day, the Mega Drive CleanRGB. We can see a nice full screen. This is composite in all its beauty, with all of the kind of, I don't think I can point at the stream for you on there, but basically on the edges of the image, so down the right and left side, you'll see those little dots. That's called dot crawl on composite. And you'll also get color bleed, so look at the big number 2. You'll see that the white bleed going from left to right. That's a bit of ghosting that the edge buster will fix. So this is pretty much the quality of composite we're going to be looking at. And the point of the mod we're going to be doing today is to give you a much better video output. So this is called the SNES CleanRGB with a little plus edge buster, which is for sharpening up the edges on the SNES. As with all the CleanRGB products, it works in combo with these CleanRGB SCART cables I've made. So we open one of these up, and you can take a look. Hey, welcome in. We have, again, a nice high quality. These are like double, triple shielded. So basically the outside shielded, every core inside as a twisted pair is shielded. So it's twisted and double shielded. I'm also going to start making them as well, gold plated. I saw some other cable, nothing to do with like retro or something, but I saw a SCART cable somewhere with gold, and I'm like, good idea, let's gold plate it as well. So this has already got like your nickel and tin plated and stuff, but I figured gold plating next will be cool. So these are, again, typically labeled, so SNES and N64, pure RGB cable. So you'll need one of these, and you'll need the mod for the console. So you could use this between multiple consoles, and you could buy these, one per console. So let's just get to it, basically. So this will be, again, a full install guide on what you need to do to completely install this product, starting with, obviously, getting the system open. So we'll just move these out of the way a minute. And we will open this up. So if we flip over, you can see on the back we have serial numbers. These I've taken the screws out. So there's one screw here, 2 here, and 2 at the front. So there's 6. And they are a game bit driver. So if I show you this on the overhead, these are a game bit driver. They basically look like this. And you get a little screwdriver. Grab these off eBay or anywhere else you like. And I don't know if I can focus that high up on the screwdriver. Not quite. Let's go back to this view. Do a little zoom in. And you can see the screwdriver tip has this kind of pattern in there, basically, for the game bit. And there's a game bit 3.8 and a game bit 4.5, I believe it is. This one's the 4.5 larger. So that's what you'll need to get in, I'm pretty sure, all variants of the SNES. So I've taken them off here because I wanted to make sure this is not what's called a one chip, because part of this product, you'll see, has edge buster written on. So this is what sharpens the edges up. On a one chip, it's already sharp, so you're not going to see the improvement. So I wanted to just quickly make sure this is a 2 chip. This cable will work on N64 once I've made the mod. So This is labelled up and ready, but I haven't made the CleanRGB for the N64 yet, unless you have the specific NUS RGB, I think the variant's called, where it's already got RGB output. Then you can use the CleanRGB Universal and wire it in. So I don't really have a guide for that yet, but I intend to make a specific N64 CleanRGB soon. So with the 6 screws off the back, next up in here, we can lift this. This is the flap. This is how the eject works. So if you're interested, the game goes over. These little white lips here just physically lift up the game when you push. So that's what the eject button is doing. We lift up from this side, pull this bar out, and then this spring will just fall out. So when we put this back in, you'll see the spring hooks into this part here. It goes through the bar and then hooks back in to the plastic. So you'll see that on reassembly. Before we lift more out, we need to get a few more screws out. So the power switch has got 2. These are just posi screws. So we can just take these 2 screws out. And you can lift that out of the way, and that's so that we can get to the screws underneath the power switch. So you'll see right there is another screw which was hidden by the power switch, and one here. So let's take them 2 out as well. And again, all the internals, I'm pretty sure, are all exactly the same size, so we don't need to separate them. And then with that, this cover lifts off. So I think we can probably zoom out a little bit. And this is where, hopefully, I haven't got it wrong, and this is a 2-chip. Yes, there we go. So we've got 2 chips, PPUs. And again, the kind of, well, the 1-chip and 2-chip doesn't really hold true for SNES because there's far more than 1 or 2 chips in both models. But it really refers to, you've got a CPU and 2 PPUs, so like a 3-chip, if you will. On the 1-chip model, there's a big rectangle chip, and it will say, I think it either says here or here. I think it normally says SNES, and it'll say 1-chip. If you have them, this all still works, but you don't need to do the edge buster, which sharpens edges, basically. What does the red pot do? That slightly tunes the crystal. So that's for, really, it's for fixing slight color issues on composite. So if you turn this, this will change the, I think it's a variable capacitor, I believe, YC, yes it is. So it's a load capacitor for the crystal, and it's to slightly tune it so it oscillates better. Whether they designed it to actually be for fixing composite, I don't know, but it does slightly improve composite if the colours are slightly out. So with the shield off now, we got the shield off so we could lift this front piece off and just pull this ribbon out. So pull towards you, there's that out, and this is the controller board. Now we need to get the rest of it out. So there is actually 2 screws that are different. The cartridge connector, so we'll take them out. And in fact, yeah, there's a few variations of screws actually, because you'll have the mechanical threaded ones as well. So 2 for them. So that's why we still don't need to really separate them if you remember what you're doing, because they're all like fairly obvious and different. We've got another screw here, which is silver at the back. And another one over here. Do SNESes need recapping? To be honest, not that often. You'd think so, but no, not really. It's still good practice. It's always good to recap the consoles. But I've rarely seen like leaking caps on a SNES, for example. So the screws out of the rear are the same size as the cartridge connector. So all up to you whether you separate screws or just try and remember them. And then I believe we have one more, which is here. And then I think, if we've got it right, the PCB should lift out. Yep, that's all of them. So with all of them out, we can just lift this out, put this shell, and you can see lots of dust bunnies in there. This will get a clean up another time. This is just a video for the install. I'll just get rid of a bit of that dust, but we won't be doing it. You know, a full cleanup. This is a video for the product, not necessarily anything else. We want to stay focused on what we're doing. Now it's out of the shell. If we flip over, We can see on the back, we want to, if you wanted to, you could get the shield off. I don't believe we need to, but if you did, you flip over, there's a screw here and 4 screws here, and that will then, and then also a screw on the voltage regulator here. That'll allow all this to lift off. I don't believe we need to get to anything under there, so we're going to leave that one on for now. And again, you could disconnect this power cable if you like. It just physically pulls out of this connector here, so that just stops that flapping around as we're working. And now we can get on to installing the mod, so not too bad. Now, I did have a guide, well, I still do have a guide for the original product I made, so let me just show you that quickly. It will be on this screen, and you can see here, this is the original guide. Now, this is the very first CleanRGB I made. I made a CleanRGB Universal that can be installed into pretty much any console. And when you're doing it on the SNES, you had to do all the wiring to the CleanRGB. You had to turn all of these potentiometers. So 12 potentiometers on this with an oscilloscope. You have the edge buster then with a load of switches, and you got all the wiring. So when we started doing this and it got popular, you can imagine how long this install took. It was a long process to do all of these wires and 2 big boards and needing special tools. So instead of those massive boards, I've basically made a combined board, much cheaper as well. So let's take a look, and you'll see now I should really have the CleanRGB Universal here to kind of show you the difference in size so you can appreciate it. I'm just going to rip this open. So you can see in here, I've gone ahead and done, well, I haven't, the factory have done it for us, all the pre-stripped wires. So they're all cut to length, all color-coded, even double-sided foam. So this has been thought out so that we can drop this in with the least amount of effort on our behalf, basically. We don't have to strip wires, and it's one of my pet peeves, having to, if you don't have a wire-free kit, I don't want to cut all these wires, strip them, so they come like this now. And the guide is basically identical, so if we wanted to follow this guide, which we probably will be just to get an idea, all it really boils down to is soldering to these specific points. So the points it tries to highlight here are the key. So Q3, Q7, Q5 for red, green, and blue, power and ground, and then sync. So it is going to be slightly different, and we will go through this together. So I'll kind of explain what I'm doing and show you how we figure it out. So even if I'm not sure off the top of my head, I can explain how to understand it and how to install it. So move the wires out of the way first. And the goal is we need to install this chip roughly around here on double-sided foam so that it sits nicely near the transistors for the red, green, and blue, because you want the wires as short as possible to the inputs, because that's how the edge sharpening works, the edge buster. And then the outputs go over to the already existing connector, but we have to sever the traces that are on the connector. That's the ultimate goal. So we tap into the RGB, we fix it up, we send it back out to the port, and we make a cut. So that's what we're going to do. So we just go over to the top view first. And there's a lot of revisions of SNES. We'll just try and get a box to rest under here. There we go. There's a lot of different versions. So this will be on this version, which is actually a CPU RGB1. That's the revision we're working on. The principle, though, is going to be identical. So I'll explain to you what we're going to do, and then you can take it from there and install it in any revision with the knowledge that you're going to gain from this. And yes, this does remove the edge blur. So first things first, we want to identify the transistors, because the one we had on the guide was Q3, 5, and something else, and this one is different. So there's a few ways to do it. I'm going to first start by opening up the schematic for the SNES, and then I'll show you what we're going to tap into. So even if your board's different, you're going to understand exactly how you're going to figure this out. Right, so this is the schematic. You can find them on our retro6.wiki. On the homepage, scroll to the bottom, click public files, which I actually need to fix the link for. It's broken at the minute. This is the SNES, so this is just the PAL SNES, not necessarily the version we've got. But what you'll see here, there's U3. If we scroll to the bottom, you'll see it says PPU2. So the PPU2 is identical on every version of SNES, every 2-chip. And this is this here. So the PPU2 is where we want to tap the signals off. And we want the red, green, and blue. So if we were to look up to the top right, you can see we've got red, green, and blue, or in this case, blue, green, and red. And these are the pins here that we want to find. So this blue, green, and red. You can see blue is always pin 97, then green, then red. So if we just took a look at this first and zoomed in, here's the PPU2. And here is pin 100, which I believe is also C-Sync, which we'll need. So see C-Sync there is pin 100. So we'll need this pin in a moment. And then you'll have pin 99, 98. So this pin here, 97 is blue, 96 is green, 95 is red. So the white dot is red, and then it goes green, blue this way. What we need to do is find out, it's always the 3 resistors on the other side, and it's always the bottom left pin. So if you had the transistors in this shape where you've got 2 pins and a 1 in the middle, this is upright. The bottom left pin is always the pin that connects to the PPU on the other side, and that's the pin we're interested in. So if we're not sure which one it is, and we don't have a schematic, like in this case, what I need to do is just probe with the oscilloscope to find out which one of these goes to the red, the green, and the blue. Then I'll update the wiki. So when we get the official guide here updated, which we'll do today when I've done this, I'll update these to tell you on each model. So we've got the GPM02 model written down, and which transistors, which is 3, 5, and 7. Let's scroll down and see if we have the one we want. So not necessarily, we've got the CPU02, but it's telling us it's Q3, 5, and 7 on that. And then we don't have this revision. So this is a perfect time now to find out which ones of these are red, green, and blue. So you won't have to do this because I will be adding this info to the wiki. But if you want to find out yourself, we'll figure out where red, green, and blue are now. So I've got multimeter on continuity mode, which basically just beeps if something's connected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to probe on, say here, this pin here. Now you can see it goes to this via here, so I can kind of stick this in. And now I can turn the board around with my other hand, and I'm probing for where Q1 goes. So it's probably easier now to switch to this view, keep that in, switch to Q1, and we go down on here, and we can see it's, let's see, 100, 99, 98, 97, 96, 95. So it's pin 95 for Q1, which means that is red. Q3, we'll flip over, and this is obviously going to be blue or green. So 100, 99, 98, 97. Let me double check that. 100, 99, 98, yes, 97. And then the remaining one, which will be Q2, it must be the 96. And that's the only thing that would make sense, otherwise we've done something wrong. So 100, 99, 98. I could get this in position. 100, 99, 98, 97, 96, which is right. So we have 95, 97, 96. So if we remember that, we can make a note of that now. So that means we have on here, let me just do an actual note, and I'll add this to this wiki right after this. So Q1 was 95, which I believe is red. I think we said 95. Yep. So that will be red. Q3 was 97, which is blue, and Q2 is 96, which is green. So that's all the info we need there. There's one other thing we need, which is the C-Sync pin. So the C-Sync pin, I normally just say go to pin 100, but there will almost always be a via somewhere around here. So a simpler way to find that, instead of probing somewhere random on here, we can flip the board over, put the probe on pin 100 like this, and then I can probe around on the other side for random vias in the area, basically, and I'm looking for somewhere roughly where I'd expect it to go. And you don't always have a via under here for it, and we have to send a wire back to the PPU. I'm just going to probe around quickly and see if on this version I can find a via. It does look, however, though, that it goes under. In fact, I can see where it goes, so let me show you how I've just spotted it anyway. You can kind of see the trace goes here, so it goes up. I'm going to make the presumption that it's this via coming out of here and goes over to here. So that's my presumption, and I'm right. So we know now that via, if we just look for that, a load of thick vias with one smaller one, roughly in this area here. So I'm going to say it's this one right here. Now that might be awkward to solder to, but that is almost definitely going to be the via to pin 100. Which it is. So for this one, it's kind of hard to explain, but I guess we'd say it's R32. It's the small via to the right of R32 is how we're going to remember that. So I'm just going to put a little arrow pointing to that via for now. So that's my little mark, that's where C-Sync will go. We do need to cut this trace as well for C-Sync, but we can cut that at the port up here when we get to that. So that's the hard work done, and again, that's something you don't have to do. This will just be info that you'll find out. If you use more expensive options like RAD X2 or OSSC, this will be the OSSC going through when you see it. And yes, that won't make any difference to the quality of the picture. The CleanRGB is what's going to improve it. You can plug the SNES into those receivers and they're not really going to enhance the image. They're just going to get you to a HDMI output, whereas the CleanRGB is going to actually improve it massively. Right, so the only other pins we need are power and ground, but a universal place for them is on the cartridge connector. So see pin 5 labelled here, and this will be pin 27. If we pulled up the schematic on here, and we looked for the cartridge connector, so it doesn't matter which version because they're all the same. The cartridge connector pinout is the same on all of them. We've got the CPU, PPU. Let's look around here. Sony sound chip, expansion port. Where is the cartridge connector? Zoom out. I can never spot the cartridge connector. It's always, there we go. Cartridge connector here. So you can see pin 27 there is 5 volts. So basically that means the left side here is 5 volts, 27, and the right side is ground. And there's also a hint on that because when I did this and designed this chip for install, I put the pins on the right side. So even if you forget, if you remember the edges of the cartridge connector before this gap, the CleanRGB has them in the right position to give you that hint as well. So what we have now is we want these inputs, sync doesn't matter in terms of length, but the red, green, and blue want to be as close to these pins as possible. And I mean like as close, like here, if you go to here, it's going to make a noticeable difference to how sharp your edges are when we come to do the edge buster. So when I say close, I mean literally as close as you can get, like here is where you want this board. And you can even put them there so they're in line. This is extremely crucial for edge sharpening. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to peel the double-sided tape off that comes with the kit. And I've made it a thick foam so that it can stick over these pins because these pins are raised. So if we flip this over, stick this on, you can see that that's now on the board, and peel off the other side. Once we're happy with this, make sure we stick it the right way, align it so the red, green, and blue are nice and close, and then stick this down. And then that's stuck down and crunched over the pins, and now it's in a perfect position. So for one of the easy parts, we now need to solder these pins. So let's get zoomed in, get the iron on, fume extractor on, and we will first pre-tin the pads, so they're always on the transistors. It's always the bottom left pin, no matter what revision. So we will put a little bit of flux on them, on these pins, and then I'm going to just blob some fresh solder on them corner transistors. And then from here now, we've got everything pre-tinned. The wires in the kit, we have short red, short blue, short green. There's only 3 short wires. So if you want the best signal, you want to tack the red on, and then you want to get this in position, there, and you could cut it and make it really short. Now, when I've tested, that's why I've made these this length. The difference from dead short to here is negligible. If you have to extend this wire, you're going to notice slight degradation. So we don't need to cut this wire. If you really want the absolute best sharpness, you can cut the wire and make it as short as possible. But this is the length of wire I found where it didn't make it's really difficult to tell an improvement. But as soon as you go over this length, it definitely is noticeable. One thing I will do though is I'm just going to trim that end slightly, because that's a little bit long for what I need. I'm going to make it nice and short like this, so it's a little bit shorter. And then you can also go to this via here, because these little vias are the same pin. So if we touch that via, it doesn't matter. But we can just go to, it says that pad there. And you can see this is why I don't usually use certain wire. That's kind of melting off a little bit. So if it's done there, we could strip that down and melt the edge instead with the solder. And it just pulls back the insulation slightly like that, and it's a little bit neater basically. And I'll probably do there we go. I'll probably do the blue and the green the other way around. So let's remember, you'll see as well, notice on here, I've done red, blue, green, so be careful of that. I haven't done red, green, blue. But that's because some revisions like this, they actually have red, blue, green. So I did it in order. But then after doing that, I realized there are some SNES models where the transistors are in the other order, red, green, blue. So just pay attention to the color order, basically. Hey, welcome in on chat. Region 3 mod on the Mega Drive. I have not had much time on yet. It won't take me long, but I'm in the midst of doing the Game Gear clean screen release at the minute. I'm having to make the entire payment server, the gateway, the admin tools, the key generation, the AES encryption. I completely underestimated how much work it was to make not just the clean screen code, but because we're doing user upgradability, I forgot how much work I'd have to do to support that, basically to secure the code, encrypt it, and take payments for upgrades. And yeah, so I'm a little bit busy on that, but certainly not forgotten it. It's one of the main things. Yeah, Q3 blue, good. And then the green. It's definitely easier to shorten the end on the tip here and solder it to here first, and then fold it over to solder up here. So that's them 3, nice and neat. Because this isn't a one chip, you can't really read this, but this should say enable Edge Buster. I could barely fit it on. I didn't want to make the board wider and cost a little bit more for the sake of that. So basically, if you have anything except a one chip, so if you have the 2 chip, you want to bridge these pads. And all you do is get a nice amount of solder on your iron and just touch for 1 second and off, 1 second and off. And just do it a few times. You don't leave it on. Just go 1 second off until it bridges. So some people struggle with that, but that's your technique. Blob on, blob off. So that's the inputs done. That's the Edge Buster enabled. And now we have, we might as well do the 5-volt and ground, which we know of. So as we mentioned, these are pin 5 and pin 27. So I'll go in there, and there. And in the kit of wires, if I just show you what's left on the wires, I guess. Move that out of the way a minute. We have the red, the green, and the blue, which are going to go to the AV port at the back, so they're long. We have a long yellow, which is for the sync going to the AV port. We have a long yellow, which is actually for C-Sync, and that's because it can be all different places on the SNESes. So on ours, we'll attach to the sync here. Well, actually, it'll be the sync here on the input. And it'll go all the way up to here. So you can see it's actually just long enough when we come to do that. So the 2 yellows are sync, the long red, green, and blue for the AV port, and that then leaves us with the black and the orange. So this is your 5-volt and ground wire. What solder am I using? Lead to tin. It is a Solder King, basically leaded solder. I'm not sure what mix, things like 60% lead solder. So similar idea, get the extractor fan back on pin 5. So over here we will pre-tin, and that's ground, and over here pin 27 is 5 volts. Again, now you know what they are, you're more than welcome to solder them to where you like. You don't need to follow the exact pins. If you understand how this works, you can literally solder it to where you like. But if you want to just follow along and make sure it works, then this is the guide, basically. So we can straighten him up. And tack him down. That's the ground. And then we'll do the same for the 5 volts. And you can see I put a lot of thought into even things like the wire length and position of pads on the board. I really thought this one through because this is one of our very popular products. This kind of CleanRGB has really started to take off. So this being sort of the second revision, if you will, of the SNES CleanRGB, I've tried to make it as universal yet as clean as possible. And because of the number of variants of SNES, we couldn't really do a flex ribbon, but having the wires come color-coded, pre-cut to length, and a good install guide should be just as good, basically. Right, so the sync input, we can tap off here, and we need to get to this pad, so we might as well just do that one now. If we zoom into this pad, this is the one thing I don't like about the SNES, is how it has this kind of coating over. So we need to cut that trace, and to be honest, because I know that trace is this side, and I can see it clearer, I'm going to cut the trace this side. In fact, we don't need to cut the trace, do we, saying that? We're going to cut the trace on the AV port, so it's universal. So everybody following this guide then will have the same step regardless of model. So the only difference in this step is finding where C-Sync is. If you don't want to find a random via, I recommend just sending the wire around and soldering to pin 100 here. And I might just do that so it kind of shows you guys, again, the step that'll work on every model. So what we can do is see if there's a via anywhere close to fit this wire through. Perfect. There we go. So that fits through. Flip over, and the wire's poking out of here. So we're going to do this instead. Even though we identified where C-Sync was, we're going to pop up out of this hole like a sneaky little wire, and we're going to tack him down to sync. So that works the same then on every version. So instead of saying, you know, look for a trace and follow it from pin 100, we're just going to say go to pin 100. If you want to follow the trace, you can. Otherwise, just go to pin 100 on the PPU. It's the corner of the chip and it's easy to solder to, so you shouldn't have an issue. So we tack him on there. That probably wants a tiny bit of flux though. It's a little bit dry. There we go. And that's just because it's stranded wire, so you're seeing the separations. And now again, looks nice and neat. Flip over, and we have this wire sticking up, which we can, I'm just going to leave it to length. There's no strict requirement to trim. I am going to trim the actual end though, so it's not this long. This is way too long for attaching to a pin. I'm just going to snip him down, make sure the cut piece doesn't fall on the board. As always, when making a connection, bit of flux, pre-tin that pad. Now I'm not even in the optimal position here, so I'll just make sure there's no excess solder on the tip of my iron first, and I'll just come in like that and blob on the edge. If you're not used to this, probably take a bit more time than I did and position yourself better. I'm kind of coming in over the other pins. A better position would be from this angle, but like I say, I'm fairly confident in doing this, so if I join pins, I'd just clear it off. And then for connecting to that pin, we'll come in, I think, from this side, because if we go close to this, we don't want it to start lifting up here and getting stuck in the cartridge connector itself. So I'm going to keep the wire down here and actually come in from this angle. So I can probably go even closer for you there. And I'm just going to attach the wire coming in from, like I say, here sort of thing. So get it positioned, go down with your iron, and there's your connection. So that's the wire, just sticking up. That can quite happily sit there like that. Flip over, then we have that side done as well. So that's all the inputs, the power and ground, and all that's left now is to send the outputs over. So these involve just simply soldering sync, red, green, and blue over to this AV port here, which, make sure you do it right, look for the actual AV port there, and we want to solder to these pins. I'll show you on the guide just something to look out for first, and that is, we go to here, here's the AV port, so it's all the same. You can see pin 12, pin 2, pin 1, there's the pin out on the wiki. So we want the red, the green, the blue, and then the C-Sync is below. So it's basically all 4 pins here is the ones we're going on. So red, green, blue, and sync are going to our connections here, and we're done. But the first thing we need to do is there are actually traces running from all these, and they're hard to see. So what I do is I show you zoomed up. These little lines are kind of symbolizing on specific models, again, where the traces run. So on the blue, it's running to the left and down, and I've cut through here. On the sync, it's running out this way, the red out this way, the green out this way. So again, I'll add photos every time we do a different revision, but all we have to do is cut them traces and add these wires, and we're done. So what we need to do is actually try and see the traces, because this is where I'm saying it's very difficult. So if we zoom in, and let's see if you can spot them with me. So this one, which I think is the blue, you can actually see this light green? This is where the copper is. And you see that it basically comes out of here and down here. So similar to the photo I did on the wiki, I think it's actually going to be the same. On the 2, you can see this line here. On the 1, you can see this little green line here. And on the C-Sync, you can see the line here. So I presume you can see them. They're just about visible. And that does look like it matches this. So luckily in our case, these traces are identical, and what we've got to do is sever through them. So let's do that now. We'll zoom in, and the best tool for this is the one you're most comfortable with, I guess. I've got quite an aggressive ball tip on here, which is way too big. So I'd need to swap that tip out, which I think I'm probably going to have to do, because my other tip, which is, let me just get this out, it's quite worn down. And this is one thing I still would like to find, is high quality little PCB grinder tips. This one just keeps wearing down, and this is going to struggle to even cut through. The problem is I can never remember where I put these. I only had them the other day, actually, so they shouldn't be too hard to find. Where are we? I know I've put the tub. There we go. I was lucky. The only reason I know where these are is these are actually from a new Fantic tool I got, and it came with some of them. So this has got some that I need. Let's see if these are any good. The tips I normally like are generally just a pointy tip. So generally just kind of a a straight point like this, and I can get in and grind away left and right. We do have maybe like this, a bit thicker tip, but that's again starting to get hard to get in. We've got this I've never seen before, a little top hat. So maybe him, but I still think I'm going to stick with the normal one. And we also have like the disc cutter kind of ones, which again, I think due to the position, the best tip is going to be this one. And I don't know whether the one I've used is out of this Fantic kit already. Looks like it is. Yeah, that looks like the same, maybe. Yeah, I think that looks like it's maybe come out the same kit, and this one has not lasted. They don't cost much anyway, so it's not an issue. So let's fit this in and grind away. Dremel will have a diamond tip. Oh, I didn't know. I've got a Dremel. We've got it on the table. But the actual tools are fine. It's mainly just the tips. You need the quality tips, and they'll fit in all the grinders. Like the actual grinder itself's fine. I did actually get... I said I got this Fantic thing one. I'm not even using that one. I don't even know where I've put that. It's just very big and clunky. So I'm actually using the tips out of that in a random small MA ant, whatever this is. I don't even know. So now let's cut these and grind these. Let's zoom right in. First one I'm going to do then is this one here. So I'm going to probably use a combination of looking at the board and then looking up at the stream. So apologies if this isn't the cleanest of grinds, because I'm doing it with stream lag and no depth perception if I'm looking at the stream. But the idea is, get your grinder pen over the trace, and without going too far away from where the actual trace is, you want to grind like that. You can see now that you can't see much, but the trick with that, spray a bit of IPA on, and you should be able to see if you've cut through the trace. And that's very difficult to tell there, because we haven't really exposed much of it. This grinder isn't doing the best job. See if I'm trying to expose the copper there that I know. It's not even eating through that. So this tip is not really doing me any favours. Yeah, it's not really got much power, this one. So a normal decent tip would have this cut through in seconds. So these Fantic tips are pretty bad. Now I think we're through there. We can actually check with a multimeter to be sure, but that's looking like we've probably gone through. So let me just pull out the microscope, I guess, and let's take a look at this properly. That will be the way to tell. So if I just position this over. And what you can also do is you could get a little dental pick to see and scrape through. So we have just about gone through that trace, and that's just because that tool is not the best. So you can see this little arc of copper at the top, and very hard to see, but there's then this line running down here. So if I expose the line, you'll see there's the line of copper coming down, and then it would go into this pad here, and it's just about been severed. So we need to find a better tool to do this. You can see this one is fairly clear here, this green line here, this light green. So let me just see if I think I've got another grinding tool. Kind of hoping I have to put it away. I think I have. So I think I'm just going to have to find my more powerful, either more powerful or better quality tips, because this tip is no good. This kind of grindy tip is not the best. So I wonder if Zach's got one I can nick for now. Let me have a look. So here is Zach's tool. Let's see if his is any better. And we'll zoom right in. And we'll go to cut the trace on number 2 now. And we'll see if we can do this one. Probably, to be honest, rotate it around. And I'll come in from this side. So we want to try and cut through this trace here. And you can see how much easier that's cutting through. It's taken seconds. So let me just spray that off. And you can see we've easily blown through there, and I've even made a wiggle as I was turning it off. So that's that one blown through. So shows how much the right tool makes a difference. So we'll grind through this other one. That's the other one blown through. And then we've got this one left here for C-Sync. And there we go. So nice and simple when the tool's right. Let's turn that back around, inspect the port, and we can now see we've easily eaten through them traces. So there's the blue one that would go down to here. There is the C-Sync that was going down here. There is the red, and there is the green. So that's them traces blown out. You could also, if you didn't want to cut these traces on the port, I just find this is the universal place again where every version will have. You could go to, if we pull up the schematic here, what we're doing is if we follow this along, basically the red, green and blue come out of the PPU through these transistors that we've just seen. Then they make their way over to this SN code chip in this case, and then out and over, and you'll find the AV port somewhere. I think this is the AV port here. So this is the connector we've just cut it from, the red, green and blue. But they come along over and they go through all these diode networks, which gets confusing, and they're different per version. So they are all this kind of network here, so all these diodes. And the problem is these are all different on every revision. So you'll struggle to find a specific guide to go to a specific place, basically. So even though it looks difficult, all you've really got to do is look with your eyes where the traces are coming from and eat through the traces. And there's nothing else really in this direct area. Right by the pins, there's no other traces. There's just the traces that come off the pins. So that's that, basically. Let me just put back some of these tools now, because the desk is full of different tools. And then all we've got to do is solder these 4 wires. And if we haven't forgot anything, we'll have perfect clean RGB again. Right, so now we can hide that schematic. We can pre-tin these pads. Let's get the fume extractor back on. Get some flux on these. And again, remembering this is red, blue, green, not red, green, blue. And then we want to attach red, green, blue, And we'll attach the C-Sync. To all the wires, and then we just go up to the top, up here, and if I remember rightly, which I'm pretty sure I do, scream at me if I'm not, red is here, green is here, blue is here, and C-Sync was here. So a bit of fresh solder on those. Grab the tweezers and we will attach these. I'm going to do blue first because it goes up and around, and these wires are just long enough again by design. In fact, I'm also going to trim this excess off, so we want these to be slightly shorter on each of these. That's all the ends trimmed. I'm going to do, in fact, to be honest, for how short the wires are, I'm going to sneak the blue up through this gap here, like this. And getting onto there. Like so. That's the blue. I'll then do the C-Sync because that's just below it. So you can bring the C-Sync in here. And then we'll do green, which goes above. And then we'll do the red. And there we have it. So, if we've done that all right, and I haven't forgotten anything, which I don't think I have, we should have the CleanRGB. So that's now, can we pull focus slightly? Yep, that's the install complete. And if you've ever done the universal one, trust me, you will appreciate how much easier this is. Whereas I guess if you've not done this mod before, you might be thinking this mod's quite involved, which it still is in a way. But trust me, if you've ever done one with the original universal mod, you will love the simplicity of this, how quick and easy that was in terms of soldering. And again, you won't have to figure out these transistor locations and things because we will be adding all of this to the retro6.wiki and the product page so that you know exactly where to solder your wires without that, basically. How does it compare to the other products? Ours is the best, simply. They're all for the edge sharpening idea. Basically, all it does, I presume the rest will do the same because you can only really fix this in one way, and it's the fault of the PPU. You can basically get the transistors here drive the RGB signals coming out of the PPU, and the edge blur specifically on the SNES is caused by the transistors inside of here not having enough current to correctly pull and push, which is, well, other way around. So pulling is to pull low on the RGB, turn it black, and pushing is to turn it white. So on the red, green, and blue, the transistors inside of here, so even though there's transistors on the back, there's D-gate flip-flops in here that also try to drive the original red, green, and blue signals. They're misbalanced, so when you can pull and push the signal, one is stronger than the other. And so there's a current difference inside of this chip where it doesn't have enough power, ultimately, to drive the signal high and low fast. And that's what causes the fade left to right, because the signal on a CRT is drawn left to right, top to bottom. So as it's going left to right, that's why the blur is left to right. It'll go white. And then when it tries to change it to, say, blue, which is a darker version of white, obviously, white's all three colors high. As it's trying to pull the signal to ground, this chip doesn't have enough current. So all the edge buster side does is this chip here, I think it is, we've just got an op-amp set in a loop, a feedback loop, and instead of resistors, we're injecting current. So instead of gaining voltage, this is monitoring for current, and it's reverse injecting current back into the PPU chip. Now, that's how you solve the edge sharpening. But basically, that's identical. Like, that's the only way of fixing this problem. How clean other mods have done it compared to ours, I don't know, but you'll see the results of ours in a minute. I've had people that have installed all versions, and they've quite frankly said ours is the cleanest. But I'll obviously always say our products are the best, so you can't really take my word for it. So let's just review what we did as an overall. We stuck this chip down closest to the transistors we needed because these are the important signals, red, green, blue, and sync. Well, red, green, and blue, really. We soldered them to the correct transistors. We've bridged the edge buster because this isn't a one chip, it's got 3 separate chips. We've attached ground, power, the C-Sync over to PPU pin 100. And then for the output side up here, the red, green, blue, and C-Sync, we've gone to the AV port, but cut the traces first. That, in a nutshell, I believe is the entire install. So let's see if that's true. Let's see if this works. Now it should do. I can't think of any reason this wouldn't work. So let's connect this back up. Connect the power up, or the power switch. We'll put a game in. We'll get our cable. There's a block button, it helps. I don't mind people chatting, by the way. This is an official install guide, but I'm very much a chill guy in terms of install guides, and people know me on the Discord, so they know who I am. It doesn't need to be a highly professional install. We're a community on this one, and I honestly don't mind. People can chat. You'll just find I won't necessarily answer you as much when I'm doing these install ones, because we also do want, the install to be free of too much chat, because people are going to watch this for see how to install the product. But at the same time, like I say, I don't mind it. So we have on here, turn that off now, get the HDMI out of the composite, plug it into the OSSC. So this is just a stock OSSC, nothing done, no profiles. This is just the raw OSSC. Power plug in here. Right, games in, plugs in. OSSC is on. If we go to overlay on here, you can see that's the OSSC. If I press this button, it's going to go to AV1 RGB, which is this. And fingers crossed, if we turn on, we're going to actually get the game loading. I really hope we do. And it should be perfect RGB. There we go. So if I then make this full screen, and then what I normally do is I'll sometimes edit this video and move the composite right in line with this so you can see the difference. But just take a look at the edges of the two now, where it's all nice and clean and sharp. All the Dragon Balls nice and sharp. And you can make it sharper if you find that certain revisions you want even sharper. You can change some capacitors on this board, but we've done this universal install so that the edges are nice and sharp, but not over sharp. So there's still a tiny little bit of softness on the edge, because once you go past that, you'll start to get checkerboard and horizontal and vertical over sharpening in the image. So it's a nice balance between clean, sharp image, but not that sharp that you end up getting any kind of artifacts, and you don't want over sharpening artifacts, basically. So that is, again, hopefully a nice, perfect RGB. So let's just try, and we've also got a, if you can see this, I've got a Japanese, because this is a Super Famicom, Japanese Super Game Boy, and we've got Pokemon Silver. Is this an English Silver? Yeah, we're going to play an English Silver in a Japanese console. So this is how you can play Game Boy games on a SNES, if you didn't know. And we put this over the top. And there we go. So we have the Game Boy loading. Let's chuck this full screen. And you can even play Game Boy games on this if you wanted to. Game Gear V4, it is... I've got a few of them here. I'm still writing the code. I'm literally in the middle of making the purchasing server to upgrade to the Pro, doing the whole infrastructure to be able to have users plugged in via USB and get an encrypted download to upgrade and stuff. But it's shipping from the factory tomorrow. What day are we on? Friday? Yeah, it ships tomorrow from the factory. We should have it by Thursday, and by then I'm hoping I've got the code done enough that we can program them, send them out, and you guys can plug a USB cable in and upgrade them with new features, because I will be adding constantly new features to this clean screen. It's going to be really good, basically. So yeah, that is it. That is the, oh, look at Charizard. Look at the nice sharp pixel. I think it looks even better when the pixels are actually meant to be pixels, like in Pokemon. They're just huge blown up pixels. But that is the CleanRGB plus Edge Buster for SNES. Now, I could show you, it's probably a perfect example to show you what the Edge Buster does. If I turn this back on, I might as well demo. I could almost do it live, which, yeah, let's do it live. I don't recommend you do this, but what I'm going to do is, if I don't crash the game, which I probably will do, flipping it over like this, and let me restart that. I'm going to have the console like this. So ignore that noise. That's probably from me. Yeah, that's like from me touching all this. I'm about to solder. There we go. Let's try getting not enough noise. What I'm going to do is take the iron and I'm going to desolder the Edge Buster while it's on. Now, I shouldn't really do this because I'm adding noise. You can see the noise already. But let me see. There, maybe not. Let's turn that off a minute. I don't want to add soldering noise to it. But remember that sharpness. Let me just remove them. I really wish I'd have done it now with it live because that was so easy to remove them blobs. This is now, what have we got cutting through? I've got one of my wires crossing over. Oh, it's my soldering iron. Let me get this out of the way a minute. Turn this back around. Why have I got noise on my circuit now? It's when I decided to, there we go. It's when I decided to attach the soldering iron ground. So if we, let me just mute that a minute. There we go. If we look at the edges on there, so it's probably, actually, yeah. There's blur on the two there, but I suppose if you're not looking too closely, you might not see. But look at the Z, say, for example. Let's try and get actually, the better way of showing this is a flash cart. Let me get a flash cart. Where do I have it? That's not no SD card in. Is it in this tub maybe? No tub. I've got a burning cart. I don't know what I've done with the. Hang on, is this it? Maybe this is it. I've got a Super EverDrive. What I want to show you is the 240p test suite. This even loads. Might not have this EverDrive set up. There we go. There is a 240p test suite that I don't have on this. Let me load it on because that's how I designed the Edge Buster, to kind of show you or test the sharpness of the Edge Buster so you really see the difference. So I'm just going to load up onto this 240p test suite, which will be in games, software, 240p, SNES, PAL. Right, let's chuck this on. And this is where you can really see the Edge Buster sharpening, if you will, like what it does. And certain revisions are worse than others as well. So you'll find, I think the CPU RGB one is already a pretty clean image. It's not that bad. There are versions that are a lot worse. But you can see in this menu already, if you look at the text, it's just got a bit of blur on. And in fact, this power supply is adding a bit of noise. We've got some interference at the minute on the power rail. Let's start this up. Yeah, so see all these wavy lines is this power plug. We've got, for some reason, I've got some interference at the minute on the mains power. I don't know whether the washing machine or something's kicked in. Let me see if I can clear that up. No, we can't get rid of that blur. Let me maybe hide and show it. That really doesn't help because the capture's now got a lot of mains noise on. So see this wavy line, this is the power supply. That's probably part of what that noise is as well. Let me unplug, give it a second, and replug. I'd ideally like to get this noise gone. No, we're not going to have any luck. So we're just going to have to deal with that noise, which is, to be honest, really annoying because there's a lot of noise there. Unless I grab another power supply. Let me see if I can do anything about this noise. Because it wasn't there a minute ago, and then once we got that audio home, I'm guessing something has been turned on in the house that's now added all this noise back to the circuit, which is a shame. Yeah, let me try one more power supply. Unplug that. Try another one. It might just be, this is an old Game Gear power supply I'm using. The Super Famicom power supplies. No, it's not that. It's going to be then the power supply to the OSSC maybe. I have so many power bricks down here, it's crazy. I'm surprised it works as good as it does. Let's see. Ah, yeah, this doesn't help. I'm powering the OSSC from a random USB brick on the floor. That's not very clean. Let's try. Let's remove that. This is probably, no, that's going to be much worse. I'll do it anyway, but this is a really unclean USB power brick here. This will be, I presume, terrible. Let's load that up. Yeah, wow, this is annoying. Wow, I've got so much mains hum. It could also be this. Let me turn the iron off. Nope. Yeah, something. We did something when it started getting all that noise. Like, you know, when the noise, well, to be honest, it's when I flipped it over ready to solder and I was going to desolder something. That's when we got all the noise. So I did something. I don't know what I did. Ah, there you go. It's the power switch. So it's got nothing. It looked like mains home, but it's literally the power switch. So check this out. I must have, when I flipped this over and nudged this. So look, there's the noise, right? So you see the noise on the screen. Move this power switch. Gone. So I've never known that before. Basically, I thought that was going to be mains home. That is literally me just squeezing the power switch. So back to where we were. See the guy on the right? See all that blur on the right side of him? All that black line fading into blur. And you can also see on this, there's some slight vertical lines that's got nothing to do with the CleanRGB. That is noise from RAM. That's a different fix. But basically, that blur on the right side of the guy, this is with the edge buster turned off. If we now turn this off, flip over, and I will just reblob them edge buster pins. So we'll just basically re-enable the edge buster, like so. Flip back over and turn on. And then go back in. I'll probably have to smooth that again by holding the power switch. And then you see how that blur's now gone. So that's what the edge buster's doing. It's sharpening up. If we sharpened up more, which you can, I've done this where you over sharpen even more, things like the RAM noise that you can already see partially would get much worse, and you'll end up with more noise than you want to see, basically. So this is like the perfect amount of sharpening that works for all versions without going too far. But the mechanism on the board can be fully adjusted. So if you wanted to get this even more sharp or less sharp, you can just change, I think it's three capacities you can change on the board and change the sharpening to whatever you like, basically. But yeah, that's all the CleanRGB for the SNES. And then again, same thing with assembly on this one. You just build it back up in reverse. Nothing overcomplicated about the reassembly. But considering my desk is an absolute state at the minute with running around to get different power supplies, I think we're okay. I don't think anybody's going to struggle to rebuild the SNES back up. And that's where you'd want it. So the reason we put it on the back as well is I originally put it on the front. And then when you come to put this back on, I realised this got in the way. So that's why we put the edge buster and the CleanRGB on the bottom. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That's another little install video for the SNES CleanRGB. If you have any preference of order of what you want to see in order, I'm going to slowly work through all the products we sell and do a nice little guide like this where we show off the actual product, what it does, and the full install guide, so that people can actually just, I'm pretty bad for designing products, getting excited, listing them for sale, and then moving on to the next product. And half the time, it's not even once or twice. I've done it many times where I release a product and there's not even an install guide, and I'll just say, oh, did you watch me do a video a week ago? That's the only time I even showed off the product. So we really need to improve on that and make sure we have some decent install guides and actually showing off what we already make, because we have so many products and just not the best install guides. And that's something I used to pride myself on at the start, was I had some of the best and cleanest install guides, and then the more products I made, I slowly started to not do the guides as good, or not even do them at all sometimes, and we really need to get back to doing that, basically. There we go, yeah. Well, at least now you know how to install them. So there should be a lot less questions the more we go. Plus, not only just showing them installing, but explaining how you'd find out if your revision is different, where you're going and why pins are going where they're going. That's the big key point of a lot of these, where people will jump on the Discord and say, well, mine hasn't got this, where do I go? And then I just retype and explain, go to here, this is why. Whereas now, these install videos kind of cover everything that I can think of in one go. So hopefully you can kind of point people to this guide and that's it. They should be able to install it for their version. The only thing we'll do is, obviously, as we work through the SNES versions of this, we'll show the exact transistor positions for each one and the exact cut positions for the ports here. That's the only difference with this product. There's so many revisions of the SNES. If you guys install them, get me some photos if you can, post them on Discord and we can use them on the guide. If not, as I'm doing it and I install them, I'll post them on the wiki as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. For subs, let me know when you want to do the next sub stream, and we'll jump on that. And I hope you guys have a good evening. Yep, you're welcome. I'll catch you probably tomorrow, guys.